Performance management process is very important to achieve the implementation targets established by PIRGs, and hence the same should be reflected in regional and national air navigation plans. We also support WP 69 presented by South Africa. We agree that the simplified version of ASBU methodology will assist states in identifying their implementation requirements. Mr. Chair, on working paper 9.1 and 9.9 presented by UAE on performance effectiveness of ASBU implementation and on harmonization of national, regional, and global air navigation plans, we support the recommendations of the two papers. On working paper 137 and 158 presented by Colombia, we support the recommendations, taking into account comments made by Council, Finland, and others. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. AFCAC.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. AFCAC supports working paper 11 presented by the Secretariat, and also supports working paper 69 presented by South Africa, including its recommendations, requesting ICAO to develop a simplified version of the ASBU methodology to assist states in identifying their requirements. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Cameroon.
Merci.
Thank you, Chairman. Cameroon supports the working paper presented by the Secretariat, as well as its recommendations. Cameroon also supports the working papers presented by South Africa, Colombia, the UAE, Singapore, Japan, and the United States, where those working papers are concerned regarding the implementation by the states on the basis of no country left behind. That is what I'd like to emphasize. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Cameroon. Rwanda.
Good afternoon, thank you. Rwanda supports working paper 11 presented by the Secretariat along with other states' previous comments. And we support working paper 69 by South Africa as very well explained in its executive summary. Thank you.
Thank you. Mali.
Thank you, Chairman. Mali supports working paper 11 from the Secretariat as well as working paper 69 from South Africa, particularly the need for a definition of guidance materials regarding the regions and the states for simplification of ASBU. Mali also supports working paper 91 and 99 presented by the UAE. Thank you.
Thank you. Indonesia.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. We all support the recommendation in working paper 11 presented by the Secretariat. And here we highlighted the recommendations regarding the encouragement the ICAO regions to embrace a performance-based approach and adopt the 6-step performance management process described in the document 9883. And also the recommendation to align national air navigation plans with regional plans to attain a global harmonized performance management process and support the achievement global performance objectives. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Asegna.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. ASECNA also supports working paper 11 from the Secretariat and 69 from South Africa regarding making the ASBU implementation simpler. Regarding working paper 165, it seems to be favorable to performance indicators, but they could be unwilling to give their agreement on normalization of conflicts, giving the priority to aircraft that are the best performers. But this is not the case for all of the ANSPs. So ASECNA, as a 18-state provider attaches great importance to equitability, and for us, it is always safety that takes priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Asegna. Cabo Verde.
Thank you, Sir Chairperson. Cabo Verde would like to support the Working Paper 69 presented by South Africa on the simplified ASBU methodology, and also the recommendations of the Working Paper number 11 presented by Secretariat. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. New Zealand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. New Zealand supports the principles outlined in Working Paper 108 from Japan, Singapore and the US. It merely asks that when ICAO is developing the KPIs sought in that paper, that it works closely with the Kenzo benchmarking working group and takes into account the views of that working group, including consideration of the costs of data collection. Thank you.
Thank you, New Zealand. And with that, we are ready to sum up. Based on Batch 1 and performance-based approach for implementation, the committee provided wide support to the adoption of a globally harmonized performance management process for the modernization of the air navigation system and the implementation of operational improvements outlined in the Aviation System Block Upgrade framework. The committee welcomed the reminder of the 6-step performance management process, as well as the clarification of the difference between implementation and performance metrics. The committee acknowledged the differing ANSP's data management processes, maturity, and noted that, for this reason, the development of SARPs and PANs to define global performance-based requirements for the provision of air navigation services was not possible at the moment. But at the same time, the committee highlighted the benefits of defining performance-based requirements at a regional and national level, according to the available resources and specific needs. The committee recognized that many challenges could arise from the establishment and implementation of KPI measures and performance management processes, and highlighted the need to develop guidance material on the subject. The committee agreed that ICAO should provide assistance to states on the understanding and application of performance management processes, in particular regarding a simplified methodology for the 6 steps and the ASBU framework. The committee also agreed to establish a group of performance experts to continue the work on performance and implementation indicators under the Global Air Navigation Plan Study Group to be convened. The proposal to list possible operational incentives during the development of new ATM concepts was supported by the committee. To attain a globally harmonized performance management process, the committee agreed on the importance of collaboration and global, regional, and national planning alignment, as well as cooperation between states. Thank you. Okay, Germany.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two points for clarification, perhaps. There was a request brought forward to, I would say, accept the reporting also on a regional basis rather than per state. We do have such a process in place in Europe. And also the point was raised, and I think twice supported, on the consideration of interdependencies between KPAs on the one side, and also on the need to update the KPIs with the development. So maybe I have not recognize it, but those were the points I would ask for to be reflected as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Germany. I'll just ask the Secretary to clarify.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. Thank you, Germany. So the specific proposals, because there are more than only the ones that you have highlighted, but we also have new proposed indicators and new development of guidance material and all of this. So all of this would be the input to this working group that would be established to work out on performance. Just we didn't want to highlight all of the proposals that have been made by the conference. And regarding the regional reporting of ICAO is currently done through Volume 3, so that is already gathered in the recommendation from the Secretariat. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Secretary. We now move to batch 2, regional and national implementation initiatives and processes. We invite the Dominican Republic to present working paper 156.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I have the honor to present paper 156 on behalf of the Dominican Republic and the chairmanship of GREPICAS, which is the PIRG for the CARSAM region. This working paper tells about the strategic objectives, safety, air navigation capacity. GREPICAS has achieved high levels of implementation over the years. At this time, the organization has ensured that the GAMP and the GASP in the latest editions are effectively coordinated by the regional offices and the PIRGs and the RAGs, and above all the states. In that context, the chairmanship of GREPICAS has proven to be proactive in cooperating with RASPA and the NAC and CAR regional offices and CARSAM states. The need for strategic planning in the various GREPICAS projects has become an overriding need, and it has been found that leader states should share their best practices with states at a lower level of implementation. The GREPICAS chairmanship has spared no effort to coordinate and cooperate and promote sharing of information among all stakeholders and those involved, including industry. This honorable conference is invited to recognize and build on the achievements of GREPICAS and identify needs and opportunities for improvements. And we reiterate to states that they need to fulfill and put into practice their commitments with the regional offices for implementation. We request that ICAO call on industry to focus even more of their efforts on helping the least developed states through the regional offices so as to strengthen states' implementation provisions through training, support, technology testing, and regional solutions that reduce costs. And finally, we request that ICAO call on the more advanced countries, both inside and outside the region, to give support to the regional offices by developing programs whereby the least developed states will be able to learn from their best practices through the exchange of experiences and lessons learned, as well as from specialized staff. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Dominican Republic. Working paper 281, COSESNA. Okay, Nicaragua will present on behalf of COSESNA.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I would like to say that this paper is presented by the Central American states, Belize, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica. They are members of COSESNA. Paper 281 is on implementation of the air navigation plan and its prospects. The paper sets out a summary of regional efforts led by COSESNA for regional performance-based air navigation implementation plan and the state plans. And it mentions what is expected of the GAMP. Central American states through COSESNA have been ensuring tracking of all the relevant documents, including the GAMP and the regional performance-based navigation plan. There have been a number of seminars and workshops given by ICAO that have been well attended. The participation in the various events and states' experiences have enabled COSESNA to develop a PBN roadmap and air navigation plan on the basis of the member state plans, taking into account regional performance objectives and the targets of the Port of Spain Declaration and No Country Left Behind initiative. We've understood that it's not sufficient to just update our own documents on the basis of ICAO documentation, but we have to align our strategic plans to the overall strategic plans as well as investment plans for the short, medium, and long term for the benefit of member states and users. States and providers have invested heavily, in some cases before the avionics of some fleets are updated and upgraded, some of which are not last generation and are still in service. In some cases, the SARPs have not yet been introduced, and it's not always possible to provide for testing. So we invite the conference to take note of the work done by Central American states, encourage states to take account of the need for planning and the different timeframes through the different ASBU blocks. Keep in mind that at the same time, it's necessary to align regulations, global and regional planning with the possibilities of investment in the states and providers. Encourage users to upgrade their equipment on board in accordance with the system update and operation in operative areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Would states please show support for the present acceptance of this paper by COSESNA? Okay, thank you. Working paper 218, AFCA. Ms. Afka.
Thank you, Chair. The working paper 218 is going to be presented by Tanzania. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and the conference, good afternoon. We are representing Working Paper 218, African Air Navigation Services Providers Peer Review Program. The paper is on behalf of the 54 contracting states, members of the African Civil Aviation Commission. This paper highlights on information related to the African Air Navigation Service Providers Peer Review Program, which was launched in February 2015 by the ICAO Council President. The initiative aimed at establishing a regional framework of cooperation and peer review mechanism to improve air navigation operational performance in Africa, and in that some ANSPs have initiated trials and drone use for lessons. At the launch meeting, following were issues of concern. Current safety levels in African ANSPs, mechanism to monitor the performance of ANSPs globally, ICAO's concern on low effective implementation of the critical elements of a state safety oversight system in many African states in the air navigation fields, and lack of an industry safety review scheme for air navigation services, akin of those provided by IOSA and on IOSA and APEX. The AFI planned 17th Steering Committee meeting held in June 2016 approved a project dedicated to the implementation of the African ANSP peer review program with the intention to help ANSPs to continuously improve the safety and the quality of air navigation operations in view of the limited ANS regulatory oversight in the African region. A series of regional meetings have taken place to further develop a suitable African ANSP cooperation framework, of which was adopted in June 2015, and implementation activities have already been initiated on a voluntary basis among ANSPs. Pioneers, which include Kenya, South Africa, Uganda, United Republic of Tanzania, and SECNA. And Mr. Chairman, lessons learned are being considered towards formal establishment of a regional framework of cooperation, as well as modalities and tools for operational implementation of the African ANSP peer review program. And these include, among others, as shown, forming teams as shown in paragraph 3.2. And in addition, Mr. Chairman, it is good to note that one, all council members in Africa have signed a declaration of commitment to the peer review. Two, NSPs and states have identified peers based on a similar characteristics to assist in pairing of ANSPs for peer review purposes. Three, partner ANSPs peers have signed the confidentiality agreements between and among each other. Four teams of ANSPs have already conducted peer support between and among each other, and 5 peer review visits have already taken place. 6, the regional training workshop on ICAO peer review manual took place in Cote d'Ivoire from 25th to 27th April 2018, and the peers are also required to provide a brief report on the status of implementation of safety management system with a reference to the ICAO 4-phased implementation approach. Mr. Chairman, our conclusion is shown in para 4.1 and invite the conference to agree on the recommendations contained in the executive summary. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will invite the presentation of working paper 219, also by AFCA.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ghana is going to present working paper 219 on behalf of the 54 member states of AFCAC. Good afternoon, everybody. Mr. Chairman, this paper, Increasing the Efficiency and Effectiveness of APERG and RASC-AFI, highlights some achievements made by the African Indian Ocean, that's AFI Planning and Implementation Group, Regional Group, popularly known as APERG, in improving its contribution to regional air navigation development. The paper also outlines some proposals to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of APERG and the Regional Aviation Safety Group, African Indian Ocean, also popularly known as RASC-AFI, which are listed as conclusions 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, and 3.4 of this paper. Mr. Chairman, in considering further action required to increase the efficiency and effectiveness of the APERG and RASC-AFI, the conference is invited to 1. know the progress of APREG and RACS-AFI activities. 2, endorse the proposal to better involve the Director General of Civil Aviation, that's DGCA, and other decision makers in order to facilitate ownership of the outcomes and implementation thereof. 3, urge states, industry, and donors to support the implementation of priority activities identified by APREG and RACS-AFI. 4, urge states and industry and all the partners to support the implementation of the proposed strategy of integration of APREG and RACS-AFI to enhance their efficiency and effectiveness. And finally, 5, request ICAO to continuously encourage all member states to provide the necessary support and technical expertise to their respective PIRGs and RASC. Thank you.
Thank you, Ghana. Next paper is Working Paper 220, also by AFCAC. Would the state please present?
Thank you very much, Chair. Nigeria is presenting Working Paper 220 on behalf of 54 AFCAC member states. Implementation Plan of Action for Development of Aviation Infrastructure in Africa. The working paper presents information on the outcomes of the third IWAF. On the third IWAF that was held in Abuja in 2017, as well as the Lome Ministerial Declaration of March 2017 on the framework for aviation infrastructure development in Africa. The paper also highlights the decisions taken by ICAO with regards to the implementation plan and the proposed future actions. The declaration and framework for a plan of action for the development of aviation infrastructure in Africa was adopted at the third IWAF in Abuja, hosted by the government of Nigeria in collaboration with the African Union Commission, the African Development Bank, and the New Partnership for Africa Development, NEPAD. The declaration was prepared within the framework of the Plan of Action 2017 to 2019, as adopted at the first ordinary session of the African Union Specialized Technical Committee on Transport held in Lome, Togo in March 2017, and in line with the ICAO No Country Left Behind initiative. The ICAO Council was briefed on the outcomes of the IWAF 3, or the third IWAF, at its 2013 and 214th sessions. In its consideration of Council Working Paper 14745 on the subject, the Council concluded under Council Decision 214/7, amongst other things, as follows. 1. ICAO's activities and actions under the Declaration and Framework for a Plan of Action for Development of Aviation Infrastructure in Africa should be implemented under existing arrangements, especially under the ICAO Comprehensive Regional Implementation Plan for Aviation Safety in Africa, AFI Plan, as a specific identifiable program with timelines. 2. Specific metrics and targets related to ICAO activities and actions for the implementation of the declaration should be developed in the AFI Plan in consultation with relevant stakeholders. 3. The implementation status of ICAO activities and actions under the declaration, including the 5 listed in paragraph 2.4 of this paper and the 5 follow-up actions listed in paragraph 3.2 thereof, should be reported to Council on a regular basis as part of AFI Plan report. 4. The role of ICAO's technical cooperation and technical assistance programs should be explored and reported to the Council, focusing on the provision of technical advice on the aviation infrastructure projects and on their quality control so as to ensure alignment with global plans, as well as on the provision of institutional capacity building. 5. There should be enhanced accountability vis-à-vis the utilization of funds for such projects implemented under ICAO's technical cooperation and technical assistance programs. Mr. Chairman, the recommendations of AFCAC on this very presentation are in paragraph 3 as attached. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nigeria. invite ASECNA to present working paper 284. Burkina Faso will present on behalf of ASECNA.
Merci bien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Burkina Faso will present working paper 284 on behalf of the agency members, 18 states, regarding the implementation of ATS surveillance infrastructure on the African continent in the framework of the implementation of the ASBUs to improve performance. The efficient provision of air navigation services in the African Indian Ocean AFI region requires reliable surveillance data sharing. The African states and the ANSPs are continually taking measures to develop and implement plans under communication navigation SNLS as per the GAMP, the air navigation plan by AFI, and the strategy that AFI carries out to provide for efficiency of air navigation. This report emphasizes the progress made in implementing air navigation services to provide for safety of air navigation, as well as creating the opportunity to improve the safety situation in the AFI region thanks to data surveillance sharing through the neighboring ANSPs, and also to meet the challenge through SSP transponders working in ADS-B mode, which are being installed even with the existence of an ADS-B mandate. We are suggesting a regional approach with the support of ICAO, the ICAO office. In our working paper, we have listed the different mechanisms for cooperation that exist in this area. For instance, regional mechanisms in the Indian Ocean. ASECNA works with the neighboring groups, the Seychelles, CAA, the CGAA of France for reunion, and other groups that are working on data sharing in this area. The results, the outcomes have to be consolidated at the level of the Gulf of Guinea cooperation. We can say that in the framework of the navigation plan for AFI, the Civil Aviation Authority of Ghana and the Nigerian Airspace Authority have also deployed surveillance systems and data treatment, data processing systems of ALDSB, and they are implementing ADSB in addition to this. The Ghana and Nigerian CAAs and AFI, which unites Sierra Leone and Guinea, are working under the ICAO office that is WACAF, and they began this work in 2016, has made possible for the stakeholders to come to an agreement under data sharing accords, and they will be carrying out ATS data sharing in their airspace. The commitment of the ASNPs has to be formalized through memorandum of cooperation. April 6, 2018, during the coordination meeting held by ASECNA in Dakar in Senegal, the steering committee of the Satellite Network Commission, AFISNet, made up of the Directors General of ASECNA and the CAAs of Nigeria, etc., have signed a memorandum of cooperation in order to give each other access to the information and the work done under common projects. As for implementation of ADSB in the AFI region, in conformity with GAMP and the AFI plan, one of the main mechanisms will be ADSB. This technology, for a decade to come, will indeed provide elements that will make it possible to deal with growing technical difficulties, and it will make it possible to deal with the challenges that the ATS services have over oceanic segments and over the open seas. This work is already underway in Ethiopia, Reunion, Seychelles, Mauritania, Morocco, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Tanzania, Liberia, Sudan, Namibia, Sudan, and 18 or more other countries of AFI and ASECNA. The continuation of the ADSB means that the advantages and benefits can be taken advantage of by operators. We consider that this technology could improve significantly the provision of air navigation services in the oceanic spaces and continental airspace that are far removed. In January of 2018, ASECNA and ARON signed an agreement to define and implement the use of ADSB data by ASECNA in 4 phases. The ADSB data will be used through VPN and the ARON system as the MPLS line is put in place. Certain states are also participating in planning and implementing of the ADSB by satellite. These initiatives, ADSB initiatives, also have to be accompanied by equipping aircraft with ADSB transponders. In conclusion, this note recommends actions to be taken by the conference to take note of the efforts provided by African states to extend and improve the surveillance services within their airspaces, to encourage contracting states and organizations to continue cooperation based on surveillance data sharing, to improve safety and efficiency in air traffic management, and finally, encourage contracting states, organizations, and aircraft operators to adopt a regional approach in the AFI region with the support of ICAO regional bodies, including an ADSB mandate in a collaborative decision-making process to enable all stakeholders to benefit from operational improvements expected from the implementation of ADSB infrastructures. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Burkina Faso. Next paper, working paper 223 from AFCAC. Côte d'Ivoire.
Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chairman. Côte d'Ivoire is presenting a working paper 283 on behalf of AFCAC and the 54 contracting states. The working paper gives the status of implementation of the AFPP program since the beginning of operations in June 2014 and implementation of performance-based navigation, PBN, as part of the ASBU upgrades. The conference is invited to take note of the information in the working paper and to recognize AFPP's contribution to the implementation, the achievement of performance-based navigation targets in African states. This paper encourages African states to join the AFPP and encourages states, organizations, and industry to continue providing support for AFPP activities in phase 2 of the program so as to achieve the PBN goals and enhance safety and efficiency of air transport operations in African states. The conference is invited to review this working paper in detail. Thank you for your kind attention. We count on the conference's support. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. And the working paper 143, People's Republic of China.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So here, on behalf of China, I would like to introduce in RMPAR what China has been carried out. Over the past 14 years, 21 civil airports in China have published the RMPAR flight procedures. And half of those companies have at least one airport with this RMPAR capacity. Such kind of RMPAR mostly at high altitude or areas with complex terrains. So the main purpose of applying RMPAR at these airports was to enhance airport accessibility and catchment, airlines flight safety and regularity, and increase carriage and traffic so as to improve operational quality. This work paper has reviewed history of RMPAR development in China and described transition from ILS customized RMPAR to public RMPAR management concept with a focus on airports. This is after so many years of China's experience in this perspective. The airport-focused public RMPAR separately manage RMPAR procedures, aircraft capabilities, and qualifications of air crew, flight crew. If airlines utilize the public RMPAR procedures announced by the airport, the operator validation process is no longer required. The aircraft does not need to validate. If pilots have relevant experience, then specific training is not needed, even if an RPAR procedure is added in the airport. This have greatly simplified validation procedures and saved resources and reduced operators' cost. We are willing to share our experience with member states. The conference is invited to take note of the simplification of operation validation process of Chinese public RMPAR contained in this paper. The conference is also invited to adopt the management concept of RMPAR and amend the Doc 9997. Thank you, Ms. Chair.
Thank you, China. That's the last working paper in batch 2. As I call on the Secretariat for clarification, please note information papers 195, 215, 261, 267, and 285. Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a small clarification on working paper 143. The Secretariat would like to inform the committee that the PBN study group and the flight ops panel are already working on the development of a process to manage RMPAR approvals and in a more efficient manner, and that ICAO will finalize this work considering the input provided by the conference in this matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We now open discussions on batch 2, United Arab Emirates.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The UAE welcome and appreciates the progress made in the COSESNA, AFCAC, and CESNA regions, and would like to congratulate our colleagues in Algeria for the progress of the air navigation plan and Saudi Arabia for the progress and enhancements in the AIM domain. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Council.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council would like to thank ASECNA for their paper on the implementation of ATS, Working Paper 284. I think this is a good example of states cooperating to reduce infrastructure costs for surveillance provisions. Further, we would like to thank AFCAC for their comprehensive paper 218 on the peer review system in the AFCAC region. Council and its members fully support the African ANSP peer review, and we strongly support all actions in the working paper, and Council will continue to support the work in the African region on the peer review. Further, we would like to support the working paper 156 by the Dominican Republic on behalf of GREPECAS, 218 from COSESNA, 218 of ACAC and 220 of AFCAC, 223 of AFCAC, 143 from the People's Republic of China. I would like to thank ASECNA for their excellent information paper 285 on the ASECNA strategy for ASBU model implementation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Greece.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon to all. I would like Greece express our support to the working paper 284 presented by ASECNA. We appreciate the included information on their constant efforts to support the air navigation services by current radar surveillance and all opportunities throughout data sharing with their neighbors in the region. Therefore, we recognize that the AFI region strive for progressive towards a seamless airspace. Thank you.
Thank you, Greece. Payne?
Gracias. Thank you, Chairman. This delegation supports working paper 281 presented by COSESNA. We recognize the efforts of the Central American states through COSESNA for planning and implementation of the air navigation plan and its alignment to the states' plans and expectations for GAMP development in the regional PBN plan. Thank you.
Finland?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon again. We support the working papers 218 and 220 presented by AFCAC as good examples of progress and improvements achieved by regional initiatives. Thank you.
Senegal.
Thank you, Chairman. Senegal supports the working paper by AFCAC 218 presented by Tanzania. The peer review program for ANSPs is an initiative intended to establish a regional cooperation framework and peer review mechanism with a view to improving air navigation performance in Africa. And a number of ANSPs have shown positive results in the program. And so Senegal encourages ICAO to continue providing its support for the African ANSP peer review program. Senegal also supports the AFCAC working paper presented by Ghana 219 to boost efficiency and effectiveness of AFI, RASCs, and PIRGs. Senegal also supports paper 220 presented by Nigeria on behalf of AFCAC. Implementation of an action plan to promote aeronautical infrastructure development in Africa. We also support paper 223 by AFCAC, presented by Côte d'Ivoire, on the status of implementation of the African Flight Procedure Program. And that program has contributed to implementation of the air navigation targets, performance-based targets, and we encourage African states to join the AFPP. And we encourage states, organizations, and industry to continue providing their support to the AFPP activities during phase 2 of the program and ensure that PBN can enhance safety of air transport in Africa. We also support paper 284 by ASECNA, presented by Burkina Faso, on the implementation of ADS surveillance infrastructure in Africa. And we support the information paper 285 by ASECNA on ASECNA's strategy for implementation of the ASBU modules. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. France?
Thank you, Chairman. France would like to thank the AFCAC member states for their working paper 223, which we support. France is involved in all of the FPP programs, and we in particular have contributed to the AFPP program since 2013. We would like to thank ASECNA for its key participation in this program, and we thank ICAO for their support through the relevant regional offices. Thank you very much.
Belize.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. As a member state of the Central American Corporation for Air Navigation Services, I would like to support all the working papers presented by our colleagues from the African Civil Aviation Commission and ASECNA, and also our colleague from the Dominican Republic. But I rise to speak to support working paper 281, which has been presented by our colleague from Nicaragua on behalf of COSESNA. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Belize. Brazil.
Buenas tardes, señor presidente.
Good afternoon, Chairman. Brazil supports working paper 156 by Dominican Republic, and we commend the many initiatives in CARSAM to improve the effectiveness of ATFM. Brazil believes that effective implementation of ATFM through agreements will promote integration and the orderly and safe development of aviation. This will ATFM requirement will likely be met, and this will support further ASBU developments. And we also support Working Paper 143 presented by China. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. Cuba.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chairman. We are pleased to take note of the information provided by COSESNA and AFCAC, and we are also grateful to China for sharing their experience. We support all of the working papers mentioned, in particular the GREPICUS paper. We are members of GREPICUS ourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dominican Republic.
Gracias.
Thank you, Chairman. The Dominican Republic would also like to take this opportunity to support the working paper presented by China, Working Paper 143. The paper proposes to simplify the operational approval procedure for NFP procedures, and I'm happy to note Secretariat's comment to the effect that work is being done to that end. We'd also like to support Paper 219 by AFCAC. In particular, item B, this is in line with paper 156 presented by our country with regard to CARSAM. Finally, we'd also like to support paper 281 by COSESNA, and we commend the member states and the paper. We want to highlight paragraph D in that paper. We have experienced the same problem where certain operators have not properly equipped their aircraft, and that makes it hard to develop the technologies, including on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you. Côte d'Ivoire.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chairman. Côte d'Ivoire supports working papers 218, 219, and 220 by AFCAC. Côte d'Ivoire also supports working paper 284 by ASECNA, which was presented by Burkina. Thank you.
Thank you. Ayato.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. IATA supports Working Paper 156 presented by the Dominican Republic and Working Paper 143 presented by China, and applaud the utilization of the collaborative decision-making process, which would include all airspace users when planning investments into surveillance infrastructures, as mentioned in Working Paper 284, and the sharing of surveillance data amongst the ANSPs. However, IATA urges that investments on ADSB infrastructure should coincide with the readiness schedule of other necessary CNS ATM elements. Technical requirements and format for ADSB performance should be consistent with the safety requirements for the intended application. as overly demanding requirements can often lead to a delay of ADSB implementation and unnecessary operational interruptions once ADSB is deployed. We also note that, in lieu of establishing a mandate, delivery of the efficiency benefits to early users has proven to be an effective way to increase voluntary equipage. With this, Mr. Chairman, IATA stands ready to assist states and ANSPs in jointly developing an ADSB deployment and equipage plan and to facilitate a good transition into this environment. Thank you.
Thank you, IATA. Sierra Leone.
The working paper 156 presented by Dominican Republic, because it carried the idea that to join forces. So we do believe that with the idea of no country left behind, the least developed state will also benefit from such idea. We also support the working paper 218, 219, and 284 as presented by Nigeria, ASEC, and Ghana because of their regional approach. We know that with that regional approach, the least developed countries will benefit from the platform of no country left behind idea as promoted by ICAO. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, South Africa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. With respect to Working Paper 143 by the People's Republic of China, South Africa would like to commend the People's Republic of China on the usage of the RNP-AR within their state. We also take note of the Secretariat's clarification on the progress made by the Flight Procedure Design Panel. However, we would like to see a collaborative decision-making process between Flight Procedure Design Panel and Flight Ops Panel to ensure harmonization of ATM to determine global applicability. Chairperson, with regards to Working Paper 219 presented by AFCAC, South Africa supports this working paper from AFCAC regarding the peer review implementation. In addition, South Africa has already benefited from the peer review mechanism, and we are of the view that this is a critical step towards improving aviation safety. South Africa further supports the AFCAC papers in its entirety, namely Working Paper 219, Working Paper 220, Working Paper 223. Further, South Africa supports the Working Paper 284 from ASECNA. Thank you.
Thank you. Honduras.
Thank you, Chairman. Honduras supports Working Paper 281 by COSESNA, presented by Nicaragua, on implementation of air navigation plans and implementation of ASBUs in the Central American region. Thank you.
Saudi Arabia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Saudi Arabia would like to thank AFCAC State for sharing their experience about their initiative and program planned and applied at the AFRI region. With regard to Working Paper 220, Saudi Arabia strongly support the recommendation, namely Bullet C. We think the definition of a regional mandate of ADSB in a collaborative manner is very important to ensure that all airspace users are equipped by the agreed time frame. Thank you.
Thank you. Nigeria.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Nigeria supports Working Paper 223 on the African Flight Procedure Program in view of its significance in the implementation of PBN, and also consider it as a very strategic avenue for the implementation of the optimization of approaches with vertical guidance in the Afri region. Nigeria would like to appreciate the contributions of France with respect to the success of this program, as well as ASECNA and other steering members of the AFPP program. Nigeria also supports Working Paper 284 on the Air Navigation Service Providers Peer Review for the African states. Nigeria appreciates the contribution of ICAO with respect to hosting of a workshop in Cote d'Ivoire early this year on the peer review mechanism, and also Nigeria has participated in the last peer review that included Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Ghana, and Liberia. And Nigeria would also like to support the working paper presented by ASECNA with respect to surveillance data sharing, as well as the AFISNet upgrade, which is very strategic for the implementation of SWIM as well as trajectory-based operations. Thank you very much.
Cabo Verde.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Cabo Verde would like to join in voicing its support for the working papers 219 on the efficiency and effectiveness of the PIRGs and RASCs, paper 220, also by AFCAC on aeronautical infrastructure, and paper 223 by AFCAC on the AFPP program. And we continue to encourage ICAO to implement and improve this program together with African states. We'd also like to emphasize how important the content of working paper 218 is on the PIRGs. The outcomes of African states in terms of implementation of the peer review mechanism have been very important. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you. Mali.
Thank you, Chairman. Mali supports working paper 2018, 2019, 2020, 2023, 23 of AFCAC, as well as 284 by ASECNA. Mali would ask ICAO to continue to support the program of peer review of the AFI zone and as well as the FPP program, the implementation of the FPP. Thank you.
Thank you, Mali. Colombia.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Colombia supports ASECNA's paper 284, COSESNA's paper 281. This is an important document on implementation of the air navigation plan. We, in particular, would like to give our support to the People's Republic of China's paper 143. Colombia is also introducing RNAV procedures in complex airports at high altitudes surrounded by mountains. And we've had excellent results in optimizing operations and making them safer and more efficient. We would like to acknowledge the efforts made and the documents brought forward by AFCAC to this session of the conference. And we recognize all the efforts to improve infrastructure and operations in Africa. With regard to the Dominican Republic, we absolutely support their paper 156 and all of their efforts in bringing forward the papers to the conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Colombia. Panama.
Gracias, señor. Thank you, Chairman. Panama would like to support Working Paper 156 presented by the Dominican Republic. It's very important to pursue the activities and programs for cooperation led by the various regional offices. In particular, we would like to support Working Paper 281 by COSESNA, which highlights in paragraph 2.4 the comments already made by the Dominican Republic. Thank you.
Thank you, Panama. Venezuela.
Gracias, señor.
Thank you, Chairman. The Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela shares the concerns about recommendations set out in paper 156 by the Dominican Republic. Venezuela is a member of GREPICAS, and we recognize the great opportunity to boost participation by states and industry and share experiences to learn lessons among states and identify solutions at regional level. We also recognize the efforts and initiatives in the various regions and states and the challenges set out in paper 281 by COSESNA, 218 by AFCAC on the peer review, and AFCAC's paper 219, and paper 143 by the People's Republic of China. Thank you.
Thank you. ASECNA.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le.
Thank you, Chairman. 284, which was presented by Burkina Faso on behalf of ASECNA, presents the global plan of the ASECNA members, and the programs are aimed in, by 2032, to have the ANSPs equipped with a tool allowing a less expensive measure for air navigation by implementing a certain number of modules of the ASBUs. So we are taking into account all of the modules of ASBU in order to implement them all and arrive by 2032 at a seamless space, a unified space with all of the neighboring states. In terms of navigation, then in that space, it would be possible to use GNSS technology, and that is the direction in which the states are working. And in this continuum, then, it would be possible to share data, and this is, in fact, already a reality in these states. There are now 3 stations, one in Dakar, one in Abidjan in Côte d'Ivoire, and another based in Europe for redundancy purposes. In our spaces, we use ADSB ground-based for surveillance, and also in the airspace, we are covering access areas that are difficult with access for security reasons, and to use SBAS, which is a reality. And so the pilot project will begin in January of 2019 in these member states and will continue for a year, and then we will take a look at the specifications and see if it can be applied at the ICAO level to then apply somewhere around 2020 to have full implementation by all of the countries of the region. Thank you.
Thank you. Rwanda.
Thank you, Chairman. Rwanda supports Working Paper 284 of ASENA, Working Paper 218 by AFCAC, presented by Tanzania, Working Paper 219 by AFCAC, presented by Ghana, Working Paper 220 AFCAC, presented by Nigeria, especially Action C, as stated by comments by Saudi Arabia, and Action D, with action to encourage other ICAO regions in considering lessons learned from IWAF/3 and encouragement for the development of similar programs. Thank you.
Thank you. Thailand.
Thank you, Chairpersons. First of all, I'd like to thank the AFCAC states in sharing their experience for us. And Thailand would like to support the regional collaborative approach on the surveillance mandates and encourage the sharing of the surveillance data as described in the Working Paper 284 presented by the ASECNA. However, we see the need for ICAO guidance, including the required legal framework guidance to assist the state in the implementations. We also support the intervention by IATA on Working Paper 284, and we encourage that the identifications of technical requirements associated with the mandates should be based on safety requirements for the intended operations. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Thailand, Republic of Korea.
Thank you, Chairman. My delegation support Working Paper 156 by Dominican Republic and Working Paper 219 by AFCAC, and especially Korea welcome the Chinese Working Paper 143 with the same concern, and especially regarding the recommendation on B, small b, of Working Paper 143 as management concept of RMPAR, and the necessity of the relevant the documentation amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Japan.
Thank you, Chairman. Regarding Working Paper 284 by ASECNA, Japan would like to support sharing ADSB data and also support IATA comments for implementing ADSB in line with performance-based approach and to take into consideration safety requirements. Thank you.
Thank you. Guinea.
Thank you, Chairman. My country supports Working Paper 218 presented by AFCAC, by Tanzania. I wanted to emphasize the basis of the ICAO Council initiative, which are clearly noted in 1.1 of 218. My country, as a member, is also affected by the benefits that we can glean from the peer review assessments, which have in fact been very noteworthy at our level. We would like to take advantage of the occasion to say that in the TUA team, made up of Nigeria's CAA, the Roberts Flight Information Region, and in fact, we are referring to the Roberts Flight Information Region in this team. Thank you.
Thank you. Niger.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chairman. Niger supports Working Paper 218, 219, 220, and 223 of AFCAC because they show an example of initiative and cooperation on the continent. We also support ASECNA's working paper and also takes note of the contents of working paper information, the information paper from ASECNA, and we support these papers. Thank you.
Thank you, Niger. Cameroon.
Merci, messieurs.
Thank you, Chair. Cameroon supports 218, 219, 220, 223, presented by AFCAC. And at the same time, Cameroon supports ASECNA's Working Paper 284 and invites ICAO to encourage the states, the industry, and donors to support the implementation of priority activities identified by the PIRG and by RASC-AFI in order to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of the regional groups. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mexico.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Mexico would just like to join in support for paper 156 by the Dominican Republic on the improvements in implementation in GREPICA states. That's an important paper, as well as COSESNA's paper 281 on behalf of the Central American states, which has very valuable material. Thank you.
Thank you, Mexico. Caso.
Thank you very much, Chair. CASOA takes cognizance of the achievements which have been highlighted in the papers presented by AFCAC and ASECNA, and we wish to emphasize our support for the working papers 218, 219, 220, 223, and 284. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Kaso. With that intervention, we are prepared to sum up the discussion. One more. Okay, thank you. So I will provide a summary, and please note that more details will be provided in the recommendations of the report. The committee acknowledged all the regional efforts and initiatives made to improve the performance of the air navigation system and encourage ICAO's support to regional initiatives, cooperation among states, collaboration with the industry, initiatives to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of regional processes, and the participation of high-level authorities in the process of decision-making, planning, and implementation. The committee also acknowledged the benefits of a peer review process in improving the provision of regional air navigation services, as well as regional instrument flight procedure design programs. The committee highlighted the benefits of investing in surveillance systems and at the same time acknowledging the need for states and service providers to consider the development of all required CNS infrastructure for these systems. The committee was informed that work related to the management of approvals for RNP-AR approaches was ongoing within the PBN study group and flight operations panel, and agreed that ICAO should finalize this work considering the input by the conference. Thank you. Is there any input to the summary? Okay, thank you. Spain?
Gracias, señor Presidente.
Thank you, Chairman. We would like to go back to the first batch report and say that for paper 11 and the comments made by the Netherlands, Germany, and this delegation, we'd like that to be included with regard to the European experience in our navigation plans. We think it's of vital importance to emphasize recommendation C and the need to do an in-depth analysis or map performance areas so as to better understand the interdependencies among areas. And we believe that the performance indicators should be based on relevant, up-to-date data. We'd like that to be included. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Spain. Slovakia.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the floor, Mr. Chairman. I would like to support the position of Spain regarding the draft report regarding working paper 11. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Spain, Slovakia, and we have noted that the report will capture this. Okay, thank you. We'd like to move to batch 3 from development to implementation of SAPs. And I'd like IBAC to introduce and present working paper 292. Sorry. Okay, please give the floor to IBAC. Slovakia, can you disengage your mic? Iba, can you try again pushing the button?
There we go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Slovakia. And thank you to the gods of audio. Good afternoon, everyone. The International Business Aviation Council is pleased to present Working Paper 292 on assessing state readiness to implement performance-based improvements. The paper is presented in the spirit of the theme of the 13th Air Navigation Conference, From Development to Implementation. As we all know, there are many steps from development to successful global implementation of a SARP across all regions and among all states of ICAO. IBAC welcomes the development of expanded capabilities that PBS brings and acknowledges the efforts and significant work accomplished by ICAO and member states to bring these new efficiencies to airspace users. IBAC would like to highlight, however, that notwithstanding the considerable efforts undertaken by ICAO to provide implementation guidance and to assess the impact of a given implementation, the level of effort required of states, both by their air navigation services providers and by their regulators, is not always assessed. In many cases, we see after the fact that states are not in a position, for whatever reason, to issue authorizations and/or approvals on a timely basis, such that their operators may fully benefit from implementation of PVCS in other states' airspace. Consequently, we believe that as SARP-related work at ICAO proceeds on its path from development to implementation, having earlier in the process collective knowledge of the ability and the likelihood of states to implement new requirements based on self-assessments. This would be better to inform the ICAO process and identify more clearly the assistance needs necessary. Such information would provide a useful metric for considering SARP development and planning the introduction of any requirement in the regions, particularly where authorizations will be required as well as any equipage mandate. Working Paper 292 proposes that this state self-assessment step take place through the state letter process. However, we understand that the Air Navigation Commission is currently working through an ad hoc working group looking at this matter among several other ways to enhance the SARP development process and improve the likelihood of implementation. Through this conference, we could discuss the need for such a step at an earlier point within the SARP-making process, or at a minimum, endorse the ad hoc effort by the Air Navigation Commission to consider, among other things, how to include in the SARP's making process a state self-assessment step and make recommendations accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, IBAC. Can I see support for this paper to be discussed? Thank you. Working Paper 297, Ayata.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The ICAO standard making process has served aviation well, and it's the foundation upon which our safety record has been established. We have, however, experienced implementation challenges over time, and more so recently, as performance-based standards can entail some complexities in their implementation. Therefore, we believe there's room for improvement. In Working Paper 297, we identified 3 areas to be worked upon in order to allow for a proper evaluation of the proposal, as well as its drafting and implementation process. These are impact assessment at the earliest stage of standard design, timely delivery of guidance to states and industry, and a structured procedure at the regional level, all this to allow for a better design, planning, and implementation rollout. As participants in the standard-making process, IATA also commits to working on these improvements. Proposed action items are in paragraph 3.1. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ayata. May I see support for this working paper to be discussed? Thank you. We will take coffee break now, and then the Secretariat will provide clarification, and we'll have discussions when we return. Thank you.